So here are some factors affecting the grief process of a person. So of course, type of death. Is it sudden versus a prolonged illness? I talked to other widows that their husbands had died after, like a prolonged illness, and there was a different rhythm. I think I'm going to use that as my term here. There was a different rhythm to losing that person than if you lose them suddenly. So the type of death does matter. The relationship to the deceased. Were they a person that was in your regular life? Now, interesting little side note on this. They don't have to be. They don't have to be to have a major impact. I had a cousin who died quite suddenly in Boston. That's my city of my birth, is back in Boston. He died suddenly from a brain aneurysm. And my grief over losing that cousin, I hadn't seen him in years, but he was part of my childhood. And I realized, oh my gosh, I lost a connection to my history. I lost a connection to somebody that would have had memories and would have had input into my personal history. So even though, and this might even sound stranger, if somebody that's well known, like suddenly dies, and then a person seems to have a reaction, a grief reaction, you want to explore representationally who was that person to your grieving person, because it's about what they perceive that person was to them. And they may not necessarily have been a part of their personal everyday life, but something significant emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually was going on for your person that you're counseling or whatever. So you can explore that. Experience or history of losses. How resolved or settled are the previous losses that the person that you're counseling has been through, or you for that matter. When we don't resolve things, life has a funny way of bringing them back around until we get to resolve them the next time. Somebody once put this way: God doesn't He doesn't care if you so-called fail your tests. He'll just give it to you again and again and again and again until you pass. And so sometimes I wish we could just, okay, I got a D on that one. Could we just put that aside and move on to the next thing? And God's like, no, but I want you to get this. Developmental stage. You can't grieve what you don't realize what was lost. My daughter, who is she's going to be 20 this year, she's grieving the loss of her dad in this stage of life. Those of us that are older, we can anticipate what losses she's going to confront as she moves through the lifespan. And so those kinds of experiences, they won't be on her radar, they won't be on a young person's radar until they get to that part. They won't be on my radar. I'm thinking ahead, right? Because thankfully my husband was alive at her high school graduation, but we have college graduation to get through, and I know we're gonna feel that. So there's a number of developmental things that are coming up for any of us, that experience a loss that you can't anticipate them all, but there are some kind of bigger ones that you need to be aware of. And no matter how committed you are to your grief process in a given time, when you feel the pop on your radar later, it doesn't mean that you didn't do it right. It just means that something else just came up and you need to be aware of what you need to express or explore around that new thing. Spiritual or religious beliefs, things like the meaning making that we have, beliefs about the afterlife. I gotta tell you, I'm not sad for my husband. He's in glory. I believe that he's with Jesus. He's in the throne room of the Most High God. Hello. That's where I'd like to be. and I believe I will be someday. And think about this too. In a moment, in the blink of an eye, he was delivered from all of his unhealed, broken woundedness that he lived with, in this life. And so I'm so happy for him. I'm so sad for me because now I have to figure this thing called life. I told my friend the other day, I'm an individual living two persons' life because I've got a house to manage. He was my gardener. He was my cook. I'm like, darn it. I have to do all these things now that I used to have a partner to do. And so I'm kind of navigating that. So your spiritual and religious beliefs can bring about a source of comfort. Now, On the flip side of that, it can bring a source of distress. If if you're working with somebody who doesn't know what they believe or they're confused, in some traditions, they might teach that, if you commit suicide, you go to hell type of thing. And so you want to be able to gently and carefully explore, what a person believes about the afterlife, and give them an opportunity and a space to find their narrative around that. Other stressors, life responsibilities, they don't go on hold. Don't you wish that you could just like freeze everything and like do this thing for a while and then come back to life and filter it in? It doesn't work that way. You have to just kind of, once again, the rhythm. You have to kind of like go swimming in those waters, go surfing in those waves, and just do the best you can. But you do have to scale back your expectations. I had to ask myself, can I still do marriage and family therapy in the aftermath of losing my spouse? Can I sit with other people's pain? Can I empathize? Can I even like function like mentally, because I'm so preoccupied. I did take a little bit of a period of time away from work, and I literally just had to kind of come back and try it. See how I feel, try it. And I did disclose to all my clients when I came back. I got rid of about 1/3 of my practice at the time. And then I disclosed to every single person, this is what happened, and I may not be firing on all cylinders, so I need you as an informed consumer. If you don't feel like you're getting the care that you need from me, we need to talk about that. I know you've been with me, you like me, that's great, but you need the care that you need, to receive. So being aware of how stressors affect you is so important, so you can kind of work with people to ask them. And sometimes this comes up in really weird ways. If somebody is reporting to you that they feel more irritable, or they're annoyed or impatient, all those things are clues. Or, typical stuff like, say they drive the 91 freeway, which that alone in itself would be enough to drive anybody to the brink. But they drive it and they're regular, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, you know what, I just got so angry and this and that. Pay attention to those kinds of things, because that might be an indication that there's some processing that they need to do. Because really, what is it? What's really bothering you? I bumped up against this a lot, both me and my daughter. We would have little bickering moments. And the surface thing, as you know, those of you that have been doing any sort of counseling, the issue is not the issue. The issue is just the surface thing, and then you have to dig underneath to see what's going on. So those are clues to kind of go further. So life stressors. Cultural expectations. There's a pressure to be okay by others who may not be comfortable with expressions of grief. So sometimes the therapy room is the only safest place just to let it all out. And I'm not embarrassed to say I am in therapy. I'm going to my therapist, and there's times when I'm in there and I'm just bawling. And I need to. Crying is a very cathartic, appropriate, therapeutic, relieving exercise. And so if the person that you're seeing this is the only safe place for them, then that's great. Then you're offering them a containment for that. Social support is really important. I feel like I'm the poster child in trying to get people to really kind of like make relationships. I have people coming into my office that they don't identify any friends. And so we start talking about how they can, get themselves out there and to find social support, social interaction, and this and that. Because people to listen and other practical help is going to be part of what helps a person move through their grieving. Because there is a lot of additional pressure that happens in the wake of a loss. And then resiliency. How does a person typically face adversity? So if you're working with somebody who, you can ask them, like, what other difficulties in life have you overcome? And, what did you do to help yourself through this, that, or the other thing? And so it gives them an opportunity to reflect back upon the fact that they do have resources within themselves. They do have inner strength that they can tap into, and they can get through this one. This is another, time where they can move through adversity and get to the other side.